Okay, Wednesday, April 29th, FoodOn Curation meeting, smaller attendance today. I'm just going to talk tech shop about some things before moving into the MIFC curation. And Anusha, did you want to talk today about the plant template, or do you want to save that for next week?
I mean, we already discussed that last week. It's just that I have to push those terms into food on now, since you have done your
Okay.
work on ODK. But yeah, I don't think so. There is anything. I think we discussed all the things in the
Okay.
last meeting. Yeah.
All right. So I'll just screen share. Oh yeah. There's another script, Magali, you might be interested in. Um, I'll just do a quick segue into that to explain. One other tool we're adding into the mix is called Menu Manager, and it's not on the FoodOn site, but it is in your data entry tool. And Menu Manager will take terms from um, Agravoc, from any LinkML source, from an ontology URI, from Statistics Canada, a raft of variables from the statistics agency. It will download those, convert them all into the LinkML format as a whole, and then you get to select specific menu items that you want to merge into a particular specification. And it's a couple of step process. So it's designed to be rerun over and over as the months and years go by. And the culmination is, and I'll just zip down to the working directory for that. The culmination is this schema.yaml that is a list of all of the pick lists from all of the sources that are brought in with their values. And so the list of enums is at the moment the bulk of everything, plus the multilingual treatment for those enumeration entries. But so the these entries span all sorts of things, everything from Canadian provinces to, let's see, could start at the bottom, but I'll just whiz down. Soil types, as mentioned by an agriculture, American or Canadian agriculture source, um, all sorts of metrics. Anything in Agravoc that you want, you can be put into one of these combined menu system files. Now,
But do you mean we can if you have the whole file from an ontology, you can import the terms,
branches of them, hierarchies of them.
branches?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like OntoFox. It does a bit like Robot. It's a little bit simpler. It's just targeting a menu item, all of its children, or you can subtract selected children. Uh,
Just to pick list, to
yeah, just the pick list.
just like control vocabularies,
Exactly. So,
display in a menu. Okay.
so all of that's controlled in this menu config, and it's got a few sections to it. It's got the APIs are sort of treated as a separate thing because you have to give them a query rather than downloading a file that has all the vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
So Agravoc, BioPortal, and OLS are all in there.
And by the way, I have make a request to have Transformon in OLS now.
Okay.
So it's on the way.
Okay, great. Um, yeah,
So
right.
you can
That takes,
request by APIs, yes.
yeah.
And then
Okay. So then the main thing is the sources. And basically all you have to do for a generalized source is put in the URL of the source as a whole
Mhm.
and to add or to get into this config file. So adding new entries to the config file consists of, in many cases, just adding a URL as a command line add option into it, and it'll actually add this source as a whole.
Oh, nice.
So this is the intermediary config, the config that goes says maintain these sources, and then the script runs off this to generate the YAML with all of the actual menu choices. So I'm just that was a brief
Ah, nice.
aside, both to
I
Anucha and
know
me.
it is a lot of work you have already done and work on it. Yes. I
Well,
know.
this is the thing. I've been using AI to do it all, the
Mm.
Claude code, and so it took um, maybe 3 days to do it all. So that's the
So, but in AgroVoc, do you import all the terms or do you make a selection first? Because
you
it's
make
huge.
selections. So
Yes.
you can either select a specific AgriVoc term,
Okay.
like
Yes, I
community
see.
fishing,
Mhm.
and just have that and maybe a handful of other AgriVoc menus.
So that you have to you prepare your pick list first, you select
Uh,
terms, and
you
then you how
the
do you do?
the menu config can hold entire ontologies and bring them all
Mm-hmm.
pick lists in the
Mm-hmm.
entire hierarchies, or it can take particular terms out of those sources
Okay.
and their menus. And then the other thing you can do is actually block both menus and specific choices from the downloaded material.
I will have to practice perhaps one day.
One day, yeah, if it comes to it. So here's a link ML source. Um, this is the actual YAML file it's all coming from, and you get to subtract concepts from the
Mm-hmm.
hierarchy and then add concepts back into the hierarchy that might have been taken out. And then you end up with, over in the schema, a bunch of, oh, you end up with a bunch of enumerations that have all of the choices from that original vocabulary.
Okay.
So tip over to Rhiannon. This is all about one step closer to enabling all of our schemas to operate off of existing schema bits and pieces that need to be downloaded.
Great.
All right. So I'll get out of that and move on to the other thing. The AI has generated the documentation for it as well, which is pretty good. Anyway, back to FoodOn. So FoodOn has the source ontology YAML file, ODK YAML config. So like Genepio, it now has some sections for the imports. So this part hasn't changed from where we were a few weeks ago in terms of the import group, which always looks in the import subfolder for the KEBI import and general import, COB import, and NCBI taxon import files um, based on fetches. In the fetches are actually done. The code for doing each of those processes for each of those import sources is handled here, and you can dig in and you'll see it's actually an onto-fox call doing the work. So this extra little script here is manually edited, but it handles this custom import module for each of those things. So none of that's changed at all. But the new changing of things is for handling the robot file side of our business. So that's where we have these components, which are either, and then this is all LinkML, sorry, this is all ODK parlance. The products are files that are included in, and some of those are just files that we manually edit as we're editing FoodOn Edit. These import files are edited. So those are just brought in without any robot interaction. And then the food materials, food products, and food process are now 3 import files, but they are robot generated, and the robot command, this is an instruction for the robot command, not just to take one template and create one output OWL file, but actually to take one after the other, and all put them into the single file. So that's really nice because instead of 10 imports, now we're down to 3. And we'll probably stay at 3 because these are kind of very different kinds of term in FoodOn, the materials, products, and process. And on top of that, the catch is, and it runs pretty quick. The catch is if there's some kind of question about where a problem with a term in FoodOn now, which is muscle. BT. I was going to, I see, right? Yes. I should pick another product. Something that's not from the animal template, because the animal template is still its own animal part. So if an export handled separately, although we're going to tweak, I think we can tweak the template files a little bit, the build process of them. But let's see. I was having some problems with some of the terms, and they would just show up as imported from FoodOn material dot owl, and I couldn't tell which source they were from anymore because now the terms being from here, you can't tell if the term is coming from one of these imports anymore. It's not recognized or stated that a term is imported from any one of these particular things, whereas it used to be with the one-to-one import. Hey, Rhiannon.
I'd say when I was experiencing the same thing in Genepio, my recollection was that, but you can also still open just like food underscore materials dot owl on its own and then see, maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe it didn't say the roots through that.
Yeah, um, it'll it'll tell you that a term has been imported via food materials.owl, but it won't tell you which robot table it came from unless there was just a one-to-one mapping. Then you would know. Okay, so that's a minor issue, but if you're at the command line running a robot and there's an error with one of the lines, you can tell that it's from a particular, usually you can tell that if it's a missing label, you can tell it's from a particular template. Now, what I see evolving is that in the robot tables, I have actually taken a look at the contents of these 3 tables and I've merged them into one. Actually, all 4 have been merged into one, but not implemented yet. So back over, back over in
So the robot process.tsv, is it different in the food product.owl and different in the food process.owl? Are those two different files or the same?
Yeah, there were two separate food process
Okay.
tables. They had different things going on. So this process model is really the process section branch, but this is what I'm going to wind around to talking about this morning um, with respect to MIFC. And then there's this food material branch. Now this food material branch here is now a merger of wine. Oh, sorry, food product branch is a merger of the wine terms
Mhm.
and the pasta terms. Down at the bottom. And, um, and a couple of the other tables. So what I'm going to do is get this in shape and then just have one line for the import section of FoodOn here, which will be just foodproducts.tsv. That is the merger of all these things. So in other words, that is this one table here.
And this is done to harmonize your current entries, or
Yeah,
this
it's
is
to
new entries? I don't remember.
these are all existing entries that are in FoodOn, and so there will be no change to their existence. It's just where they are in the import system to simplify things. So FoodOn will always have these animal and plant templates, and I think those will sit aside as import files. And then we'll have all these other terms that aren't in those templates. So I expect that they will end up in these three: material, product, and process tabs.
But I mean, is this has this to do with the tickets? Currently, we this summer I was browsing through FoodOn, and so I made some by type of food, let's say, some comments
Yeah,
to prepare things for the mappings. And so, is that the purpose of this robot template to re to check if everything is in the right parent hierarchy and so on, or do you
it's to
use it just
simplify.
to?
This is like dated more from what we wanted to do last year at Veganigan. Um, to simplify the number of robot tables that are
Okay.
uh,
Mhm.
importing terms. We still have to get into those issues and tackle the hierarchy
Mhm.
adjustments for fats and oils and stuff, but
Okay.
getting there. But so then the other thing that's happening with these tables is that they no longer have synonymy fields in them. Um, if you scroll along, it just sort of ends in this case with the inputs and outputs. Food material sort of ends without any synonymy. Even the cross-reference field probably doesn't need to be there. And the
Oh,
reason is they're all over in the SSOM synonyms table. So this will now be the table to hold all of the synonymy for any and cross-reference or any term that has a FoodOn ID associated with it. So in merging the food material tables and the food product and process tables, those three, I took all of the synonymy terms out of there and put them into this table. Now I'm going to do one more move, which is to run a query on all the other sources of FoodOn synonymy and cross-reference, and I'm going to move them all over into entries in this table. Why am I doing that? So that we have a robot model that can provide FoodOn without all the synonymy just by looking at the content of these tables, or it can also add in all the synonymy here. Now, you say, this isn't an SSOM table. No, it's
That
not.
was my question. Yeah.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. It's, in a sense, it's a precursor to take each of these columns and make an SSOM row out of them over in this template.
Mm.
And then once
This
that's
is
done, we can actually reverse the flow such that this is the place you curate all the term synonymy and cross-reference. Actually, DBX cross-reference, maybe that can't go in now that I think of it. I would think so. I think there must be a sort of equivalent in SSOM. But anyway, so there's one text TSV table. We'll have them all. And then we will generate a import file that looks like this
Hmm.
for all of the terms. Um, and it may end up being that the import file is done directly from the SSOM template because there's no more information. This table isn't providing any more information than this one is. Uh, but it's could be a well, there are particular tags. So I haven't figured out what the script or the robot transform will be directly. But anyway, um, so FoodOn will get all its synonymy into here, and then we'll make an SSOM template out of it, and we'll do that curational switch to just edit here and have an import file for that stuff.
Okay. So yes, that I had two questions. One of them was, okay, so which file in the long run would we be editing? And it would be this one, and then we generate the one that's compatible.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. And
yeah,
then I guess the second question I have is, so in this template format, we it looks like we would have one row per annotation, right?
right.
So if you have something that has like 10 synonyms, you would have 10 rows.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And that just brings, I think it puts the right emphasis on um, core logic versus language.
Yeah, yeah. And I like that you have the match type assigned. Personally, I think that's a nice quality that SSOM brings, and that wouldn't be convenient to apply in like a really long
Right.
like row column based one. Like having a row based one makes it so you can add that level of accuracy, especially as we might be getting more and more into automated mappings, then we can
Yes.
differentiate between when it has been human curated versus maybe an AI agent.
Yes. And then, of course, whatever other SSOM columns might show up as important match. I guess there's a score or something. Okay, so that explains a bit. There will end up being one more file import, which will be the SSOM table generated, uh, SSOM, so SSOM mappings. That'll go in here. I'll just comment that out for the moment. Okay, any other questions there? Okay,
Only one that for the food material tab, have you already created the report file for that?
for which one?
It is for the food materials tab.
Um, no, no, this is the compendium of those
Right.
four tables. So I think it's ready to go, but it has to be tested and we have to actually import. We have to get this thing working at the same time because otherwise we'll lose the synonyms because they're no longer in um, the food material table. So,
Yeah, because I think this food material table we just created a while back. It's more of like I mean, when I skimmed through it, I think it still contains a quite a bit of older work, and I don't think we ever generated .owl or .ofn from some of those sections. So if that's the case, I feel like we could probably clean it up, recreate and restructure some parts of it and remove any unused sections that are now converted because they are now covered by the seafood and animal templates. So there is a possibility of some overlapping material.
hmm, okay. Well, what I
And
know
I
is
can take a look at
this
that.
this table here by name didn't
Hmm.
exist before in any one of the tabs. It is a conglomeration of these four tables. So, and the same thing for the food
Okay.
products. There was one. No, there was no table for food products. There was one for some products made by process, like with 30 entries in it or something. These are now all going into this one. So
Mhm.
yes, there might be some duplicates in here somewhere, but I didn't check for duplicates entries yet.
Okay.
But mm, if the I did fix a few problems along the way in trying to get all these to get together, but these are taxonomy and so on, but these are internally coherent. Um,
So
all
how I couldn't understand how this food materials dot owl is different than the one in the food on robot tables.
okay. So food on robot tables.
Yeah, this food material food underscore material.
Oh, well, this is me copying the contents of uh, these tabs from the animal and
I don't think so.
oh,
These are
except not for the plant parts. That's still a
okay.
separate. Is that
Okay.
right? No, 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 it is. It is actually. Yeah, this is actually merged in.
Yeah. But
Um,
I feel like the content in this tab which you're showing, that's different than the robot animals and all those stuff.
Uh,
it's so there were two. There's there's another robot animal parts table that's not here. This was a shorter table.
Mhm.
I'll show you.
Rhiannon, you wanted to say something, I think?
Oh, I was just wondering if there was in the existing or the intention of having any clear like mappings between this tab equates to this TSV file, or if they're all just like perfect matches for like the label of the tab. I was just wondering, I guess, if there is
Hmm.
Yeah,
a way in case something's
Yeah.
ambiguous that someone can directly know, right? This one means this TS it goes saves as
Exactly.
this TSV.
Yeah, exactly. I
okay,
was
just
also wanting the same.
so first of all, hmm, there are that one wasn't even used.
I think it's the animal parts.
Yeah. No. So this is part of the animal template. Anything to do with the animal template isn't in that food
Oh, okay.
materials thing.
Right.
It's handled separately. It's got,
Meat cuts.
I think it's got meat cuts. Did I
Yeah.
just say that?
Because it's outside of the template. So,
Yes, meat
yeah.
cuts. Right. It's got everything that's outside of the templates.
Hmm.
Mm.
And then the plant
Mean,
parts.
which means we'll be able to shut this down as soon as I do this switch here. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. Phase two
Hmm.
will be this switch, and I should be able to get that done next week.
Mm. The only part which I felt confusing because the file name says that food materials dot owl, so I was confusing this one with the tab you showed in the food on robot tables.
I, yeah,
Yeah.
that is not yet the switch, but it will be. So in theory, doing the switch right
Right.
now,
Okay.
um, doing the switch right now will enable this. It's the other one, right? Whoops. Um, oh, in theory, the switch will enable this.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks for clarifying that.
yeah. Okay, and what was the other question, Rhiannon? Um,
Oh, that basically pertains to it. It wasn't that question I had. Is there any kind of mapping that shows like right this tab is TS is this file name, and
right.
like if that was going to be in like a README tab or maybe a wiki page or a README doc.
I'll get rid of these extra tabs as soon as I make the switch so that there was no confusion.
Okay, yeah. So generally, it'll just be it's it's whatever a tab name is with robot in front of it,
Right,
basically.
right.
Okay,
And so the only thing to get going is to add this SSOM mappings to cover what's lost when we actually do this switch.
great. I say this is also really helpful for me because what I had asked to have queued in OCR on this Thursday was to talk about how we want to structure
Mm.
um, these files in GenFU.
Mm.
So I
Mhm.
can just go off of and mirror how FoodOn's doing it whenever possible.
Yeah, and in at the moment, in reality, in terms of the columns that are in food product and food material, they're the same columns. So in reality, we could even have both of these two tables together as one table, but I'm holding off that because I know food material should mainly have any kind of terms that aren't in the animal template but are raw ingredients, there or that aren't in the animal, plant, fungi, seafood,
Yeah,
but are
and
raw.
sometimes, I'm sorry, I was just saying sometimes it's easy to have these compartmentalization when you're curating, because then you know when you're like sorting or just trying to compare with relative things, it's all the same
Yeah,
pattern,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
The only thing I will say is for the food materials tab, I can still see these entries, like suppose this fish raw or something. Now we are creating them through the animal template.
Yeah.
So I guess before you make that switch, we'll have to make sure that the unused sections should be removed from this tab. So it won't
And
create those
there's
entries in FoodOn.
there's a really easy robot query that can do that.
Okay,
It'll go and look for every axiom that's in
right.
one robot import, and it'll make sure that it's deleted from any other one.
Okay, awesome.
So that will be a cleanup that removes duplicate statements in the ontology.
Right.
All right. Uh, okay, so that's the background changes. And now just to get into the food characteristics paper and MIFC stuff. So um, the big thing about the process models, it used to be just a big long list of processes, but now for every process, we're going to add um, the characteristic and the material terms. Now, did I mention that last week? I can't remember if I really said so. Okay. So that's going to happen slowly and surely. And the priority is just to work with the MIFC terms. So what I propose for the food characteristics table is that even though there are 400 uh, or so processes now mentioned and some related terms, um, that we will just focus on the MIFC terms in the process table. And those will be, and there's this column now for MIFC. Those will be the items that have an MIFC entry name. So there's a little bit of a curation task to ensure that, and I've just started doing this. Where's a good example? Yeah, there's an MIFC heat treated and term, and that's matched here, and it's under heating material as a process. And if we've got a MIFC thawed term, then we'll have a thawed characteristic here too. What we'll also have in many cases for process is the output material term. So thawed from frozen raw, which is simply a material that has characteristic um,
But
thawed.
why this is a material entity in green?
That's right.
But why is that just toad? The label is just the adjective?
You're right. Yeah, that shouldn't be just that.
Yes, it was
This,
confusing for me, but I
this is
remember.
actually a characteristic. Thank you for your fast and keen.
I try to follow.
So good. I'm you're showing why color coding works. Okay, so there's actually food thawed.
I prefer this.
Right. Okay, so it's that triumvirate. So I think that we begin the characteristic paper with a discussion of the triumvirate. Um, and so it's kind of like a new table of contents, and then we'll just move all the other junk away. So, introduction, food, term, triumvirate, process.
And we can link this to the previous paper, perhaps? No?
Yeah,
About or about your process by objective and process by mechanism? I don't know.
yeah, right. And then I think we'll talk about the robot table for processes for the triumvirate.
Mhm.
And then we can talk about the MIFC priority curation, and then get into each of the MIFC sections. Now, Kai may say we have to backpedal from MIFC per se. Is I don't know. We'll make that decision if we have to, in terms of the outlining that it's a USDA thing or something. But okay, so that will simplify lots, and uh, I'll try to have that in place as a shell uh, mm, mm, before next week, so that we have a full month to curate whatever we want in this paper.
But do you still make the second paper about the food phenotypes? Is
Uh,
that always
yeah,
on the?
it's the sort of the different way of looking approach, and I'm not sure, Magali, maybe um, we have this other content. How easily can it be organized?
Mm. I think this is what I have in mind to link with the process modeling we already published.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it's also good to have this part on SOSA and oboe. It is a complementary part of what we already have published, I guess. And
Um,
then you can link to characteristics more deeply.
would you say food phenotypes is sort of a bigger version of this in terms of?
I don't remember because you proposed to have a part in another paper you called food phenotypes, but I think the purpose is to link the triumvirate you mentioned,
Mhm.
but have a focus on the characteristic side here,
Yeah.
the qualities,
Let's
characteristics.
see how much, like maybe this diagram stays in this, in our new paper, in our MIFC oriented paper.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
But in the MyIFC, there is not all the aspects. We are more focused on food security, food safety, let's say, with cooking and cooling and so on. And there is not so much sensory characteristic.
right. Okay. I think you're
And
right.
I think sensory characteristic are a big part of the characteristics paper.
Right. Not.
I think it is linked to MyIFC, as far as I understand, is linked to the content of the USDB
Yes,
database,
it
and
is
so it's not all it's not covering all aspects of food.
not sensory or.
And this I have worked on this in Transformons, and I would like to 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 um to say that we are working on the mappings also, even if we have not gone so much because it is my point of view was to rely on FoodX2, but to extend FoodX2 to sensory and other aspects also. So it was my point.
Yeah. Okay.
And perhaps you are more on the food safety side in your work. I don't know.
Well, MIFC, yeah, would be USDA is not so much food safety, but nutrition.
Yes,
Um,
but in your lab, you are more on food
oh,
safety.
uh,
Or
I mean, that's the heritage, but so that's why there are terms there. But um, Um, I'd rather it be more focused on what recipes.
So on nutrition,
Model.
composition,
Yeah,
and
nutrition
recipes.
and food sample provenance.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, Rhiannon.
Oh yeah. Oh, I guess one comment is being like, yeah, I think a lot of the food safety stuff now kind of ends up more in Gen FEO using FoodOn to fill in any gaps that's needed, but the like risk assessment stuff and things like ends up in Gen
Mm-hmm.
FEO. The other question I had is just like kind of adjacent, I guess maybe more about it getting directed to resource. But I was wondering, are there any examples of the process models that have like time points or chaining of processes together and how you add that temporal element? Because it's just something that's been coming up for me in my work, and I don't want to
And also my
repeat
point,
efforts.
yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Rhiannon, because it was my intention. My question was about this work we are doing about the statement, the states versus process. So you still mentioning the temporal entities and the link. We are discussing about the changes of identity. So
Yeah.
do
Okay.
you
I sh
mention this in this paper, or it is in this recipe paper only?
let's see. I must say I've learned a bit in the last couple of months trying to write this other piece for philosophy oriented treatment. Um, yes, I can. Don't think we won't talk about change in the food characteristics paper, but in terms of understanding how to model change in events in sequence,
Mm.
um, there's a lot more to say there. And it's interesting because it's about where do you attach time?
Yes,
Yes,
exactly.
and
Like
I
time
think
points.
it, yes,
Yeah.
And
and I
so,
think it is the previous paper on process modeling was just tackling this, and so as you mentioned, you did more
yeah.
deeper approach. I don't know.
So Rhiannon, I am testing out a treatment of time in the Recipe 2.0 paper. And that is project is a go with Magali and a few others, but no deadline, no early deadline, more like a fall deadline. But the issue is OWL, of course, can do a snapshot logic about exactly how everything should be connected at one moment in time. The moment you change something, you run into contradictions. So where do we put this metadata layer about time? And
Yeah.
how do you create identifiers to track anything that's connected to something that's supposed to be a perdurant lasting through time? So I've written up
Yeah.
a bit about that. I'll send it to you
Okay,
for
sounds good.
feedback.
Yeah,
And
and I oh,
and
finish.
realization is that uh, whether you're in Dulce or the BFO time temporal people or UFO or whatever, different teams are trying to attach time to different parts of
Hmm.
it. So some are attaching time qualifiers to the instances of the material to
Hmm.
say, here's an identifier for something that existed between here and there, but it's actually a temporal part of something that actually spanned, so an organism, and going through different
Yeah,
stages.
they're
That's
doing like a range of time instead of start end. Right.
right, but you have to have instances that are connected to some other instance through these temporal parthoods. So that's one
Okay.
treatment. But it turns out there's another one. You can actually attach time to the characteristics that are associated with something. So
Hmm.
a characteristic is only true of a certain range, like the weight is true from this time to that time, and it's pointing, it's connected to. Um,
Right. Yeah, like this person has existed from this time to this time, but they might have only had this characteristic from this time to this time.
that's right. Now,
Yeah.
the problem is there's not just characteristics like weight, which we all have from the moment we are born to the moment we die, but we might be in an embryonic stage. but there's certain characteristics of an embryonic stage that just don't exist for any of the other. So
Hmm.
it's not only the value that changes, but the characteristic goes in and out of existence.
Yes.
So there's the possibility to be attaching time both to the characteristic itself as well as to the value of that characteristic over time. So
Okay.
now
Yeah.
that's not the only place you can attach time. It turns out you can attach time to the relationship itself. So there can be
Right.
two instances of something located, in some other thing, but then that only pertains for a certain amount of time. So you can attach it there. So when you look around at the world, everybody's doing a different treatment. They're attaching time this way and that way.
And
Uh,
that's and like and I guess like I don't have a problem with that. I'm just trying to figure out what would be appropriate for yeah, I guess like what are the options for process modeling and then what are
yeah.
the relevant ones theoretically or being implemented for the process models that come up in our work, especially if we are having like one-to-many values. Like I'll actually talk a bit about the meeting we're having later this afternoon. I wanted to bring up like it's not a model I'm trying to finish, but it's trying a model. It's a travel model I'm trying to conceptualize because I know the travel terms requested by the NML is basically a series of history. So if
Yeah.
someone did have that data, how would you structure it so it could be chained together
Yeah.
based on time points
Yeah.
or things like that?
Yeah. So an easiest way is to say there is some um, well, no, I shouldn't say that. There's not an easiest way, but if nothing changes during the span that you're trying to collect observations for, then you can call it an event. And
Mhm.
But
that's
just a
It's
question
just
here
yeah,
in
but
the
it.
yes.
Oh, go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry.
I was just gonna say, yeah,
Just
and that because sometimes you have these big processes and then sub processes that you're chaining together. But sorry, Magali, go ahead.
yes, I
Yeah.
just realized that in your diagram there is no process. So I guess that I have in mind that we have mapped we have the mapping between SOSA and Prov O, for example, and we are relying on time ontology in PA2, but in
Mhm.
fact now there is a mapping, and so each step is a time interval. And here in your time versus quality characteristic or material entity, you are not linked to the process. So I am
Yeah.
just wondering if
Well,
we
that's
can
fine. I
also
didn't.
attach time to process.
Right, right. I didn't. I talked. Yeah. So in the past, I've talked
It's
about
a spatio-temporal region, yes.
it's
Hmm.
a special temporal region in which there is an initial state and a final state, and there may be component states. Yeah. So
So, but this state is
this little
not in
diagram here,
BFO. Uh,
this is the same thing as establishing a state. I guess I could have said that, but anyway, yeah, I hear you. Yes, this diagram could probably benefit from another acknowledgement that a process itself is a
a
special.
time interval or spatial-temporal region.
Yeah. Uh,
Mm.
Anyway, yes, and to Rhiannon, yeah, I don't have a problem with people doing different things. What this starts to invite is that we can actually accomplish a transformation that allows one paradigm to be transformed into another. Um, okay,
Yeah, that sounds great.
yeah, uh, but yeah, so any event, what I learned last year is that any event, maybe you don't call it a process because it's what I figured the minimum characteristic of an event is that there's some characteristic that of a spatial temporal region as a whole that has changed during the span of the event and then changes again because an event is marked by some characteristic that's changed value. And that's even more general than a process that has to have inputs
Mhm.
and outputs and so on. And so this is war and peace at work. There was peace, and then there was war, and then there was peace again. So, so we're willing to name things in the world events as long as there's something that distinguishes when it started and when it ended, whether it's signing a peace declaration or declaring a war on paper or something more tangible like a phase of an organism's life cycle from one.
Yeah. Or one of my examples is like a flood event, and the change is like obviously the flooding of a region.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, I have a slideshow on floods if you ever need it in terms of the ontological treatment.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just pulled that up as a random example to work from with the geospatial like um stuff because
Right.
as you'll get into later about like how geolocation is just like used so vaguely all over the place and trying to ground examples for what we need for our kind of data stuff. But
Okay.
that might end up being helpful, especially if I want to use it to demonstrate a model for it, just even as the proof of concept.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I ran through a group how to define flooding. It was crazy to
I
find
believe it.
how different it is out in the world
Yeah,
than in nature, whatever. Anyway, okay. Uh, hmm, that's all I have to say today, Ben. Hmm, about, okay, yes, about the food characteristics. So we will just acknowledge that the paper is about that and not about these other things.
Mhm.
Um, and I'll try to redraft this, and then people, what we can try to organize is that people tackle um, people tackle checking sections of this paper. So there's one section here that really gets into the MIFC food cooking method, where everything here needs to be backed up.
Like, how can we deal with this stuff? You want to merge the two. You want to I don't know.
Yeah,
You will put the food on
I'm content.
definition and
I'm content
in
that
this table as you mentioned. So how do you make the link between the two?
I'm content to keep the MIFC terms here exactly as they are,
Mhm.
listed, and that we review them one at a time through here. Happy to have the transform on ID here, and
And
uh,
also I have to put the ID for process, so I can add the ID for the
well,
process.
we don't. The reason this process thing here, um, so MIFC doesn't have processes.
No,
Um, transform on does.
yes.
Um, Now, in the future, we'll be handling those by the SSSOM tables.
Hmm.
Yes,
Yes, but this can
put the
be, I
transform
can
on
do it
ID here.
easily if you, yes, we can. I can just suggest, I don't know what is best, but
Well,
I can do it manually easily. And so then we can agree on the mapping in SSOM because if we agree on the definition, we can say that it is an exact match.
actually, so it's probably more worth your while, and I can tidy this up with the script first, but it's
Okay.
probably more worth your while to put the process, characteristic, and material transform on IDs here.
Okay.
And
I
then
will.
to put them in
Okay. That
the,
was my question. So I have to wait. Still, you
yeah,
tell me.
yeah, let's see how does it go, the food X2 label, MIFC label, and we can add
A column. Okay.
yeah, now it's not necessary that we have the transform on definition here,
No,
although
just the URI.
yeah,
Okay. Nice.
okay, and then we can read that into the SSOM table as well.
Okay. Mm, fine.
um, and it's a process. So okay, next week, let's talk about divvying up the sections.
Hmm.
And this heating section needs a lot of cross-reference.
Yes.
But in theory, what I was starting to do is bold every MIFC value that has been covered and mapped over in FoodOn robot table. So the ones that haven't been, whoops. Oh, right. No, they're all
Because we are still working on the definition, so you will add the FoodOn definition in
right,
the green one in the
right,
other
right. So
slide.
everything
Okay.
bolded here has been covered in the robot
Mhm.
table, doesn't need review, but anything that isn't bolded does need review over here,
Okay.
and adding the characteristic or the thing material. Okay,
Fine.
all right,
See you
good.
next week. Have a nice day.
You.